From KUNC and the NPR network, this is In The NoCo. I'm Brad Turner, in for Erin O'Toole. If you find yourself struggling to keep up with email at work, or Slack messages from coworkers, or virtual meetings on Zoom, you're experiencing something called Technostress. Technostress can also include anxiety about keeping up with new technologies or being replaced by them. It makes employees miserable, and easing technostress at work is an ongoing struggle for managers.
Technology changes the way we do work.
That's Jason Thatcher. He's a University of Colorado researcher who studies how people do their jobs and use technology in the workplace. In a recent paper, he argues that the key to reducing tech-related stress is to understand that individual employees will react to different technologies in different ways. In other words, technostress in the workplace is manageable if you take the right steps. And he says it's especially important since technology seems to blur the boundaries between work time and personal time.
The joy of it is we arrange when we work. The hell of it is that it never ends. We kind of get stuck in this all day, all the time work cycle.
Jason, you've studied technostress for more than 2 decades. What fascinates you about it?
It's changing. It's pervasive, it's everywhere, and it's shifting, and it's wriggly and hard to figure out. And that keeps it a really engaging topic. When I first started studying technostress, we were worried about too much email. Today, we're worried about too much TikTok. We're worried about too much Slack. We're worried about your wife sending you a text during work. We're worried about you sending your wife a text during her work. And we're worried about our parents contacting us, which is something nobody thought would ever happen when I first started thinking about these things in 1998. So it's just fascinating how it keeps moving.
And these have real impacts on us. These aren't just annoyances.
No, they really are things that change and shift how we feel at work, how we feel during our workday, and how we feel afterwards. And that's why it's so impactful when we get these interruptions.
Jason, your study looked at what you call bundles of technological stressors at work. For instance, I might be feeling what you call techno invasion if I'm getting constant emails and Slack notifications during my personal time, but I might also be experiencing what you call techno overload because I have to be on my screen all the time. Why does it help to think about stressors as bundles?
So it's interesting because each technology may bring a different stressor with it. So we may make the mistake of thinking, okay, if I just turn off my email, I'm going to feel less invasion, so therefore I'll feel better. But that doesn't mean you feel less overload. Because when you turn email back on, you may have 100 things that have been waiting. So it's really helpful to take a step back and say, okay, this technology and this technology and this technology may make me feel overloaded. They may make me feel like my day has been intruded into, and it may make my life more complex. So you've got to manage all three in order to start feeling better.
Just to get personal here, I feel like I experience more fatigue after a long day of Zoom calls. What bundle or category does that fall under in your research?
So I think in part there's overload because during that Zoom calls, the emails keep coming in.
Yep.
Right? The Slack messages keep coming in. It adds a layer of complexity because the people on the other side can see where you're sitting and you're working. Back when I was just doing phone calls, you couldn't see anything. It was great. You heard my voice. Today, the cat walks in, the dog walks in. That's a little bit more stressful. Right. And then there's the uncertainty of Zoom and the call getting dropped. And I think we've all been on those calls where we've had 5 or 6 people and someone's talking and suddenly they cut out and we're all sitting staring at each other. It makes for a long day.
Let's talk about how employers can help their employees with this. Jason, your argument is that individual employees will struggle with different tech-related stressors and that it's up to direct supervisors to make a plan or a strategy for each employee. How do you recommend they approach that?
So I think the first thing you have to look at is what does the job require? Do I need this employee to always be online, or do I need them to check once in a while? And really think through what you're going to ask them to do in terms of communication and communication styles. One of the biggest complaints we hear from employers right now is employees are not working when they expect them to work. Okay, so then sit down and ask yourself, when do I need them online? When do I need them to be available? And then once you've sorted that out, give them the degree of control over when they work that they need to meet your expectations, but also juggle all these other things that they're being asked to do.
How can a manager know which types of technostress affect an individual employee? Is there some sort of assessment process you recommend?
Good management skills that were timeless in the 70s, 80s, and 90s are still good management skills. And we used to talk a lot about management by walking around. Either physically or virtually walk around and talk to your employees and just ask them how they're doing. And then the second piece that I would talk to managers about or encourage them to think about is that measure of control they give. They'll find that if they extend trust to their employees to do the right things once they've told them how to do it, most of them will. And giving them that employee the trust and the control over the time they work will work wonders for navigating the stress.
I think some bosses might be skeptical about empowering their employees and saying you have the choice of when and how you engage with email or other job duties. What would you say to a manager who's concerned about that?
Give them a schedule. Give them a routine. If you establish a norm that people are available during X number of hours of a day, and then they have a longer lunch, say 3 hours in the middle of the day where there's some permeability, give them outcomes, give them metrics that you can actually evaluate for how they're doing. And if you give them outcomes and they're doing fine, you're worrying too much.
So different employees experience different types of technostress, and what might be good for one employee isn't good for another. You point to the car manufacturer Mercedes as an example of a company that attempted to reduce their employees' tech-related stress. What did Mercedes do, and how successful was it?
So Mercedes is a really interesting illustration. What they told folks was that they didn't have to do email on the weekend. And so come 5 o'clock, they turned it off. They strongly discouraged their employees to email others on the weekend. They found out that come Monday, people were really freaked out because they wondered in the background what was going on, what had gone wrong, what was piling up and waiting for them. And so what Mercedes did was modified their strategy, and they said, email less, email what's important. Some positions didn't need to, other positions like sales or supply chain, these are 24/7 jobs and the people in them expect it. So it's okay if there's some traffic. So they found that they had to really think through who that policy applied to, when, and then what power they gave the employees over when they respond.
It's interesting that there was a process of experimentation, that the first solution wasn't the right solution, as it turned out.
Yeah, most of the better companies build in feedback loops to learn, right? And as you start trying to help your employees navigate stressors, particularly stressors connected with introducing something new, there should be a natural give and take. And as part of that, you should be listening to your employees. The goal here is that everyone performs well. And if one shoe doesn't fit everyone, then maybe we need to listen a little better to find the right shoe for each employee.
Jason Thatcher is a professor at the University of Colorado Boulder's Leeds School of Business. We'll include a link to Jason's research on technostress and how to reduce it in the show notes and at KUNC.org. That's it today for In The NoCo. I'm Brad Turner. Thanks for listening.